Welcome to the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast. I am your host, Estelle Bingham, and together we'll be delving into the profound meaning of love, the driving force of purpose, and the beauty of connection that shapes the fabric of our lives. In each episode, I sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals out there to understand the ways love has touched them. Chris-Anne Donnelly is a designer, a poet, brand strategist, and energy healer. As a lover of all things tarot and magical thinking, she helps entrepreneurs build their businesses via intuition, strategy, and magic. After a recent accident last year, Chris-Anne has experienced a renewed sense of gratitude and awe for life. There is so much wisdom grounded in her experience, and I'm so excited to chat to her today. For those of you who don't know, the Tower Tarot card is a card that represents things being blown apart. Usually it's depicted as a tower with the top blown off and people being blown out of the top of this tower. So it's everything that we know as foundational, our homes, security, our jobs, being turned upside down. And that's really the meaning of this card and happens to all of us at certain times in our lives. Chris-Anne, welcome to the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast. It's so wonderful to have you here. We were just chatting about how this is our fourth attempt to have you on the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast. But everything is always as it's meant to be, which is very intrinsic to your way of thinking and being, that everything is, it's divinely designed and it's magically created. Tell me a little bit about your magical thinking.
You know what? I am maybe an optimist by nature. I'm definitely a cup is half full person. And also, I do believe that everything happens for a reason and that every challenge that we're in or every lesson that we've learned, even if we don't want to be in it, and even if we don't want to be learning it, it's always on some level, if we open our eyes to that possibility, going to help us.
I love that. And I love that because you are an amazing tarot card designer. And some of our listeners may have heard of the Light Seers deck, because obviously it's huge. But if you might not be into tarot, I don't know, whoever's listening to this. But it's a wonderful, sort of reimagined tarot deck, isn't it? It's actually just something quite new about that, Chris-Anne.
I created the deck I started creating it in 2017. So it's been, the world is different now than it was. And in 2017, there weren't as many tarot decks on the market. And I really wanted to create one at the time that felt like contemporary life, that felt like I could understand these characters, that I wouldn't have to always go to the guidebook. I wanted something that would be easy to read with, easy for beginners, easy if you had never picked up a deck before, you'd be able to pick up this deck and kind of figure it out. That was my goal.
And I love that because, I've got a background in reading. For me, I always use the tarot as to guide with the pictures, and I get information sort of psychically that drops in. But the tarot are a wonderful way to communicate whatever message is that, whoever I'm my sitter, whoever's sitting, who my client, and I can give them the pictures because the kind of psyche can embrace the pictures rather than sometimes the truth of a message. And I love the fact that your deck is intuitive like that. It's not about having necessarily knowing what the full card means, blow by blow account, but actually just you're kind of feeling into the card. We don't have to go back to the book. It's actually start to activate some of that kind of internal intuition almost.
Yeah. And when you're giving readings, I love that, no matter what deck it is, mine or someone else's, I love when people deliver a message. The cards almost give us this beautiful reason or excuse or way of it almost bypasses everything that we know about ourselves, or it gets kind of right into the shadow, right into the unconscious mind. And it allows the client or the querent or the question seeker to be sitting there, look at the message, and then be like, oh yeah, this is actually the message. It's like the cards said it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we could get those messages in a psychic reading without the cards.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
sometimes the delivery isn't as powerful because the client doesn't kind of I don't know, there's just something special about cards where it kind of bypasses, I think it bypasses some of our conscious barriers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed, when I was doing this years ago was it for me, I'd have like a very short amount of time and a really sort of potent and strong message from spirit. And I had to get that, I had to kind of, I talk about getting it over the line. I had like maybe I'd had 30 minutes to get something really like bypass all the chat and the ego that I could hear them chatting away, like who are you? You haven't got anything to tell me, this and that. And, so how do we do that? And I found that the tarot would just help bypass that stuff. So it's just, here's a picture of, the 10 of swords. There are 10 swords in the back of someone's back, and this is how you'll feel, or like whether it's in the heart, which or those sword cards, or it's, or the tower is just the tower, like you are upside down, inside out, and then suddenly the ego surrenders. So what I was able to do then was kind of work with that ego defense, those ego defenses, and actually that moment of like, oh wow, yes, I can see myself being blown out of the top of that tarot, and now I'm open to hearing what you have to say.
Absolutely, and the tower, this is my life right now. I'm in it.
Well, this is actually, and we, the last time we spoke was last year, and we first met now a couple of years ago, and I can't believe how time just rushes on, Chris Ann. But
Yeah,
we met at a Hay House conference in New York, and had such a special connection with you. And you're a Libran, right? Are you a Libran?
Virgo,
Oh, you're Virgoan. I
Virgo.
always say that to you.
Yeah.
Have you got your Virgoan? Have you got any Libra in your chart? It's just Virgo. Is it a lot of
I
Virgo?
am a lot of Virgo, like Virgo sun, Virgo rising, Gemini moon, so tons of Mercury. Yeah.
Tons of communication energy. Well, we just had a lovely connection, didn't we? We had a really lovely
Yes.
connection. And since then, I know that you've actually been through quite a tower experience, because you've mentioned that you had a brain injury last year, Chris Ann,
Yeah. September.
in September, which has obviously turned everything upside down. So tell me about that, and how does that feel, and how is that landing in relation to
Uh,
this sort of ever evolving sort of experience of being human?
right. I mean, even I would say even prior to I had a motor vehicle accident. So even prior to the car accident, I was already in a space of like, oh, I feel this creative block. And there's like a lot of, when the world is so chaotic,
Mm,
sometimes it's hard to find that spark to create, right? It's
hmm
hard to create when we're not like feeling grounded, and not for everyone, but for me, that definitely is the case. So I was already feeling this sort of like for a while, this kind of like strange energy of like this tumultuous creation energy where I'm wanting to create and I have a creative spark, and then everything feels so molasses. Like this was like for a couple of years actually leading up to September. I'm not gonna say my accident. I'm changing my wording on that, the
hmm
accident.
hmm
And right right before this all happened, my creative energy came back. Like, I had this whoosh of creative energy, so many ideas. Reached out to our publisher, and we had this lovely conversation about a new book that was supposed to come out in January. And as serendipity would have it, as the universe would have it, like sometimes the universe, it's just like you just can't make it up. I know that you know this, and we have to find the comedy in it,
hmm
because the exact same day that they sent me the contract was like the day when I had my accident. So I was like, okay, that was definitely like I was rushing into it with this creative energy. Maybe it just needed to like sit a little bit longer, right? But I had a significant concussion. I also had one in 2020 and many as a kid growing up as an athlete. So it was not the first time. And this one was like, it was not like any other brain injury I'd had in the past. It was much more significant. I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't remember the date. Um, I had a really bizarre experience. I would say the first week and a half afterwards, first maybe 10 days, 12 days, I was so what felt like high. I was running on this beautiful part of my brain that didn't have my worries online. Like there were parts of my personality that were not online for a good chunk of time. So I wasn't worried. I had no anxiety. I had no stress. I had not a care in the world about what was going on anywhere else except for like what I was witnessing and experiencing. And I knew that I was hurt on some level, but I didn't understand the extent of it because I couldn't. Cognitively, I wasn't processing in the same way. But from the outside looking in, I was just, I'm healing, I'm fine, like peace, love, and happiness, everything's great. I had this beautiful experience of who I am without the worry, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the conflict, all of the junk that resides in my brain normally. um, and I say it was beautiful. Looking back, it was really challenging when parts of personality started to come back online because, from one day to the next, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this feeling that's back. What is that? Where is it coming from? And as certain, I was kind of at night having all these memories come back. I was having these dreams that were memory dreams. It was very strange where I felt like it wasn't a full life review, but I felt like there was this life review process of like remembering things from when I was a child or when I was a teenager and remembering them from a very different perspective. And I had all of these questions like, oh, I didn't see it like that before. And like, oh, am I a good person? Even like I had all these because the contrast of being without worries to memories come online and then the feelings that also came back online with them was so stark that it was very challenging for the first month, even just to live in my head for a while, because the part of me that is it's going to be okay didn't come online until afterwards. So there was like this unraveling of, I feel like maybe it was like base personality, like we are all good. We're held. We don't need to worry. Life is amazing. We're going to be fine. Even in moments where we can't cognitively process, it's like, I knew that I was going to be okay. And then memories and then worries and then anxieties and then self-doubt. And then, okay, we have the tools to deal with this. But in the moment where I didn't have my tools, I don't think I've been through such a challenging space in my brain, or at least not for a really long time. Yeah.
Wow. So really great news that you're recovering so
Oh,
well
yeah.
from the accident. And
I'm
this,
so grateful.
yeah, deeply grateful. How was it for your partner sort of experiencing, well, witnessing this, the parts of you, that had come online and the parts of you that hadn't, and being sort of companioning you,
Right.
as you sort of rebooted, and I don't know, did they know that, did he know that you were going to definitely reboot? Like, what was the kind of story around that piece? Were you told that everything was going to come online, or was it a matter of let's wait and see what happens?
Right. So, like I said, the universe could not be more comical in the way it set this up. When I was rear-ended by someone texting. That was like the way it happened. There were a few, I don't really understand how it worked. I think it was adrenaline. There were a few minutes where I was like, okay, like I was cognitive. I wasn't I knew that I had to text him. It was almost like I can't really explain. I knew I had to text him. And I texted him because he was on a plane. He was getting on, his plane was about to take off. So he wasn't home. And so he wasn't there for the first little bit. My mom came to stay with me for a few days, just like she was like, I want to make sure that you're going to wake up at night, kind of like the old way thinking about a concussion. And so he wasn't there. He wasn't aware. I don't think that even my mom was as worried about it as, because I wasn't worried about it, right? In the moment, I was like, everything's fine. Like, I felt honestly like I'm good. I'm great. I'm healing. I know that I'm going to be fine. And I kind of like just kept saying, I'm great. I'm great. things are going to work out. I'm going to heal. And okay, so back to your question, because I'm going on a tangent here. There was moments in my recovery where we weren't sure that I was going to be okay. And that was very, very challenging for my husband. And he did not break, like, as far as his emotions on that until after I got better. And then I noticed really how stressed he was about it, because he was like a rock during it. Like, he was like, "You're going to be fine." I told him at some point, "Just tell me I'm going to be fine." And he did that.
Yeah.
He was like, "You're
Yeah.
going to be fine." There was never the worry that I wouldn't be back to myself, because I remembered who I was, like, very quickly afterwards. It wasn't that, but the worry was, are you going to be able to use your eyes again? Are you going to be able to look at screens? Are you going to be able to read, paint? Because I couldn't use my eyes for a long time. And as an artist, or as an author, the skill of using your eyes is, well, especially the artist part, it's paramount. It's like, it's necessary for the work that I do. At some point I thought, well, maybe I'm going to have to learn how to dictate speech to text and figure out how to author without being on a screen, because it took about 4 months before I could actually work on screens and now I'm about 2 hours a day, which is fantastic. So, I mean, slowly things are just getting better and better. But it has been a significant journey. Yeah.
I mean, it does feel really the sort of synchronicity or the timing of the accident, when you got the contract, or you got the kind of nod from the publisher, and for one project, and now it feels like that this is the project. This feels like the book, right? Or this actually, this idea of these parts of you coming online, but this original state, and I'm fascinated by that, the neurological sort of impact of sort of not having the ego defenses, or the noise, or the stories, the associations with the memories online, and just this sort of almost this pure state of being,
Yeah.
or of just a presence, just moment to moment, and that kind of the freedom of that. It feels so free and so light, and it feels very like the true essence, which is our true essence, which is what I speak about a lot, which is this place where we are present, and we're in a sort of a kind of deeply aligned state, where
Right.
we're not crowded in by the emotions of the stories, of the memories, from all of that stuff. And I suppose a question I have for you, actually, Chris-Anne, here is, because you mentioned the memories started coming back, some of the things that you remember from childhood, and this, you'd had a kind of, there's like a pause almost as they kind of re-entered the brain. They were fired up again. You kind of reevaluated them, and then, or different emotions were actually felt
Yes.
into by you. So things that you were like, I'm fine, it's okay. I don't really remember it happening like that. It wasn't so bad. I'm fine. It's okay. These things that it was kind of a shattering of the glass, break glass moment.
Yes.
And you're actually like, hang on a minute, I'm having a memory coming back, and that's not actually okay, and and that hurt, and it feels like we're kind of into like an itchy, scratchy remembering of the
Yes.
memories, where you're kind of coming back into the body. So, and energetically, that's, I suppose, as a healer, I'm always working energetically, but you're kind of
Yes.
coming back in, and something really fundamental is shattered in you. And that's your sort of protection, the protection that you've built over the years. This, very, feels like a very powerful, because obviously, you're many different parts. There's many different parts to you, but quite a powerful armory around the
Yes.
idea of these stories.
Yes.
Oh, they're fine and they're done. And then it's actually like, oh no, bump, we're into a brain injury. And they're coming back in and like, oh, wow, no, that wasn't fine and okay.
Before I jump into some specifics there, I think you'll find it, I mean, I find it fascinating that my memory of the actual event, hearing the car screech behind me, and then seeing myself from the right side of my body, looking at me, and then hitting my head, with the first initial, and then back again is when I remember being back in my body. So I do think that there was some sort of like leaving the body moment.
Mhm.
That's the way I That's my only memory of what happened. Which is maybe also why it was so significant, because it didn't seem like it should have been as significant to my brain as it was, you know?
Right.
And the stories when they came back and the memories, some of them were, oh, like you intuited, I thought that was okay and it wasn't. And some of them were the opposite,
Mm.
which were much more difficult for me to deal with. Like I had I'll share one without sharing any specific, like without sharing the details. But it was at a party in high school, and I had not thought, like, I don't even remember, like, I don't remember this party. I mean, maybe yeah, we a party in high school so
Mm.
long ago, and I had been at this party, and it was one of these, someone's parents were away, and everyone just went over to the house, sort of thing. And then I remember having heard years later that the woman who had the party was actually raped at that party.
Mm.
And my memory of that shifted from, like, we were just a bunch of high school kids and then we left, to, oh my goodness, was I the friend that left? You know what I mean? It was like I saw things from her perspective. And we had not ever talked about it because we weren't that close. But it was like I can't really describe it, but it was like I was getting information that wasn't just like from my two eyes,
Mm.
right? I started to get some information, maybe from the field, maybe from just what I've been thinking on and learning on for the last, I don't really know exactly why it came back the way it did. But that's where my question was, like, was I the person that left, or was I the person that wasn't there for her? And like, how did she feel about that? And so there were a lot of moments in my life that I had just remembered as kind of these benign memories, that I was getting information from others' perspectives.
Mm.
And that was an incredible challenge because they were just so different.
So wow. So then the challenge is to meet those experiences and all those memories, those new, ways of seeing it, that new way of seeing, and seeing those memories, to meet them with more compassion.
Yeah.
So digging even deeper into your well, or kind of growing, or figuring it out in this moment. So it's a real, you're really confronted with that. Hi, it's Estelle here, and I'm so excited to share my new book with you, Manifest Your True Essence, Clear Your Blocks, Find Your Joy, Live Your Truth. This is more than just a book. It's an invitation to come home to your heart. Within its pages, you'll find the guidance to reconnect with your true essence. Through gentle meditations, heart-centered practices, and soulful wisdom, you'll learn how to release old patterns, embrace your divine spark, and manifest a life filled with love, purpose, and connection. You can order Manifest Your True Essence on Amazon or wherever books are sold, and begin the sacred journey back to your heart today. Remember, you are love, you are light, and you are infinitely powerful. How compassionate are you? Like, how forgiving can you be with
Right.
the younger version of you?
Right.
How much sort of love can you bring to her in the moment, to see all sides of the story, to the truth, the
Mhm.
reality, to be, eyes wide open, and still forgive her through that, or kind of be, so it feels like a lot's happening.
So much. A lot is like understatement of the year. Like, it's been incredible though. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
it's one of these things where it's been so challenging. It's been so challenging from a nervous system perspective, yet I still feel like it was such a gift.
Mm.
And it has offered me this sense of presence and quiet like I've never had in my life, or not since I was a teenager, because
Mm.
I had to be forced off of screens for 4 months, and off of writing and reading and painting and anything and everything that I would normally use to either put myself into flow state or distract myself. And so this presence also makes all of those feelings so much more wild and so much more important, because it's my only possible experience is to be with my thoughts in the world. So, I mean, it's been amazing from a presence perspective and from a getting back to what feels like real life. There were moments, not as much right now, but there were moments the first 4 months where I felt like everything digital was not the real world,
Mm.
because it wasn't the world that I was experiencing and I had no access to it. So I felt like, I was thankfully offline through all of the last bit of 2024 when there was so much going on in North America. I'm Canadian, but in the States, there was just so much going on that it was so, I guess, in a way, so lovely to not be connected to everything.
Mhm.
Because I was in the middle of healing my own, I had to, we're healing ourselves as we go all the time, but sometimes that external digital world can just be so shocking to the
Mhm.
nervous system.
Mm.
And so my sense of presence was something of a marvel.
Mm.
I had moments where I was just watching the snowfall for hours or wanting to walk and try and catch snowflakes like I did when I was a little kid.
Mm.
Or I just enjoyed the wind through the trees. And it's not that I didn't have those moments before. I meditate. I'd always been someone who believed that I knew what presence was. But forced presence for such an extended period of time was just so different. Yeah. So now I'm struggling with like, don't allow the digital in as much right now.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of want to go back to those points, and the point of this sort of AI was, there's obviously we've gone from 0 to 100 and on in terms of digital, and this and what the kind of crazy sort of tidal wave, the tsunami of what that looks like for all of us, and how it really does separate. I mean, it really separates us from this extended silence, or this extended this presence with no interruption. Is something really to be said for that, because of course, spirit can speak to you, your family and the light can speak to you in these silent times. You connect with the earth, you connect with the mother earth. All of the things that we talk about and think about
Mm,
are, nourished and happen in these really beautiful uninterrupted times. And we there's just less and less ability to truly be present, like you say. Although even little bits, whatever you're getting, if you're listening, remember, it's good and it's enough. You just, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, go for it and stay doing it every day,
mm.
because it really does help. Um, I just wanted to sort of ask you about, because you are a designer and you're an artist, and what, firstly, this separation from the digital did for your magical thinking. What do you think it's brought back to that?
I'm not sure yet, to be honest with you. I'm still healing and I'm still in kind of the process of what does it mean and where, how do I want to work in the future? I do know that my work will, in some shape or form, include the intention of more presence.
Mm.
Like for whatever tools I make or whatever I'm creating, there's going to be that. Now, someone listening that knows my work would say, "Well, you create tarot decks, and that's already a part of that's already a part of what you do." But I think in a much more intentional way. So that's kind of, there are ideas floating around in my mind that maybe it means more analog, maybe it means less online, maybe it
Mm.
means, I mean, I'm not totally sure yet.
Mm.
Uh, I know that when we first met, we both chatted about, we were at this Hay House mastermind, and that we were talking as a group about AI, and you and I kind of we're on the same page as far as like we're not really sure about this.
Mm.
um, and the funny thing is that when I had no access to Google, because I didn't, I had I had no access to like even figure out what was happening with myself,
Mhm.
and to ask someone else to try and Google and research, it's people did it for me, but
Mm.
I wanted, I was like so desperate to be able to have some sort of access that about 3.5, 4 months in, a friend of mine said, well, you can use AI with by speaking to it in an audio way. And I had been, not that I'd never used it or never touched it before, but I was very averse to allowing it into my world in a big way. And it was very helpful, I would say. It was extremely helpful to be able to get some quick information without using my eyes. I'd never thought that I would have to figure that out. And so that made it easier. So that was a positive. But I had some really interesting conversations with it when I couldn't do anything else. And this AI algorithm at one point was telling me that, well, that's a great idea. And I was like, but that's not my idea. And it said, well, I'm just a mirror of your creativity. And I was like, no, you're not. You're not a mirror of my creativity. You're a mirror of collective creativity. You are like farming all of human creativity to give me this answer, which is fantastic, I suppose, if we use it for good. But don't tell me or don't try and convince me that this is my own creative energy that you are flipping back to me. Even if you have my words or even if you have my voice, this is not actually coming from a spark within my own spirit. And maybe a month later, I was out for lunch and I was sitting with someone who is a poet. And she was telling me that she was using AI for something at work and it made it so much quicker. And well, basically, to sum it up, she had said, I would have come up with all of those words on my own, but it just did it for me. And I was like, oh, this is the narrative. But I don't personally believe that any of us would come up with I wouldn't even come up with my exact same words if I tried to write the same chapter twice. Like, it's impossible that I would, you know what I mean? That this is just my creativity being flipped back to me or our creativity being flipped back to us. No. So I'm kind of maybe not as afraid of it as I was when we first met. But I am curious and cautious and also in a space where it did help me. So I've got really mixed feelings about the whole digital era we're stepping into.
I think for me, it's all about the in-between part where the part of your brain that doesn't use itself to find the words for itself starts to shut down and shrink and minimize. And then suddenly we're in a place of shrinking consciousness rather than expanded consciousness.
100%.
So my point is sort of, for human beings, humanity, expanded consciousness is actually wiring. It's not dewiring, and so when we take big chunks of the what the brain does and we say you don't have to do that anymore and it doesn't do that, then obviously our gray matter shrinks, which is scientifically proven. And when the gray matter shrinks and we're relying on AI to do these big pieces of work for us, and we're shrink, and actually, ultimately, there's a kind of a dehumanization that happens for me, and that's what I'm picking up energetically. And
Yes.
I'm not usually so forthright about these things, but I really feel this quite strongly. And
Yes.
I get this, that
Same.
the dehumanization of our psyches comes from when our psyches are not expanding and we're not on the rise, we're not blooming, we're not moving out, we're not asking the questions and finding the answers directly in through our own brain power and firing up in chemistry, and we're not firing those neurons out and doing what and we're relying on, and so then humanity's in a shrinkage. And then
Yes.
it's has a whole story, which is a whole episode unto itself. But that's where I
Yes.
am on that. So if you're listening, those are my thoughts.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
That like the whole point of existence is to evolve, or that everything that's alive is constantly evolving. And when we give ourselves a tool that stops that evolution, we're in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
Yeah.
But on a positive note, Chrisanne, you do help entrepreneurs, become more entrepreneurial, because you do have all of these beautiful and creative, these creative skills of designing and painting and the poet. You're a poet, and all of these wonderful things are happening all the time within your psyche. And you help other people find their purpose, entrepreneurial in an entrepreneurial way. How do you do
Mm.
that? Like, what is sort of what's the first thing when someone comes to you for a session? Like, what is it? How do you direct them to that part of themselves, or how do you support them? With those endeavors.
I used to have a creative agency and work in branding for like my pre-tarot, and not really. There was a lot of time where they overlapped, but my first career was in design and in branding. And I watched so many people kind of come and go, and we do branding for them and come and we do their strategy. And so many people wouldn't dream big enough, is what I distilled it down to. They're like, well, I need to do this thing because this is what the market expects for this tiny dream that I have. Because all they wanted to do was, they were so afraid that they wouldn't make money, and they wouldn't, um, their business wouldn't take off. So I saw a lot of people creating their businesses out of this kind of following the template, really, like, the yoga studio that needs the om on the
Mhm.
wall, or whatever it was. Um, so many different businesses following the template because they were afraid that if they didn't follow the template, it wouldn't work. So number one, giving people permission to like do it differently and do it the way you want to, but also helping people to dream, helping them to
Mm,
access their
mm,
bigger dream, to access what they really want. Because it's fascinating how many entrepreneurs have a really giant vision for themselves that they don't even have access to. Or maybe they do, but they've shut it down because they're like, well, that's in the future. So in
mhm,
order to get that thing, I have to create this small thing. And kind of, people have these archetypes that they attach to their own visions of self. And some people are stuck in this kind of, when they think about, let's say, Apple, or like some of the big companies that they look at, that they're like, "Ooh, I've learned they started in a garage and they need to like go slow." Well, sometimes that's true, but sometimes people put themselves in a proverbial garage that's not
mhm,
actually what they wanna do, because they believe that that's the way the story needs to roll out.
mm,
You know what I'm saying?
mm,
So they kind of make themselves so small, and they are creating the struggle because they believe that they need to struggle in order to create the bigger thing. So a lot of times when I sit down with people who are just trying to figure it out,
mhm,
I'm like, "Well, let's just get to the big stuff." Like, do you really wanna do this? Like, do you wanna do this and sell your time for, like, a certain amount every hour? Or, like, what is the bigger dream? And then when we can actually uncover that, like, that's the thing, give people permission to dream bigger and give people permission to actually look at that big dream and say, "That's possible." And when we uncover that, then it's like all of the smaller steps to get there make a lot more sense, instead of what I think I need to do to get there.
That was a perfect explanation. I love that explanation of just really it is the giving permission piece, isn't it? Just, and dream a bigger dream, and allow that to land. Just start seeding that today, but vision into that in the beginning. Just blow the ceiling on your limited ideas of who you can be or will be or, should be.
Right. And a lot of people, I think in right now, 2025, there are a lot of voices around, well, you don't want to be so positive that you're setting yourself up for failure, or, manifesting la la la. Like, there's a lot of counter culture to manifesting and positive thinking right now. And in the tarot spaces and in spiritual spaces. And I actually think that, when you get beyond the feelings of it, when you look at actually the way the brain works, or about
Mm,
positive psychology, around the way um, the way your brain changes when you give yourself permission to see something, or you're working with your ideas for the future, the way you actually do start thinking differently. then all of those conversations sort of fall away. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of opinions about positivity and positive thinking right now that I think are based in the way we're feeling collectively.
Mm.
But when you actually look at some of the science behind it, some of the way we actually work as beings, and if you're like me, and I know you are, you believe that we have this whole like spiritual game that makes a huge difference the way we feel and what's happening in our reality, then I don't know. Maybe I'm old school that way, but I've seen it happen over and over again. The way I perceive my possibilities in the future effectively change them and have
A
time and time
hundred
again.
1,000%.
Right?
Chris Ann, without a shadow of a doubt, we know that. And that's the medicine, isn't it?
It is.
That's how
It
we
is.
create our reality.
I had someone, what's coming to mind is I had someone comment on, I've been sharing a little bit of what I'm going through and had this sort of, oh, toxic positivity comment. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is my life.
Mm.
I'm not telling you what to do for yours,
Mm.
but in my life, I 100% am allowed to and expect myself to um, pick myself up when things are hard, and even if it's not my fault, I fully believe it's my responsibility to do so because nobody else is going to do that for me.
Mm.
No one else is going to see the road, see the goal, see the possibility and the potential and the lesson, even when we don't want another lesson. Sometimes we get them and they're still good for us if we choose to see that. So,
Well,
yeah.
those things can exist at the same time, right? I think toxic
Yes.
positivity, there's confusion around that kind of concept because we, spiritually bypassing is everything's love and light, everything's love and light. And I
100%.
really
Yes.
understand that because it's not. I mean, we're itchy, scratchy, and this is
Yeah.
we're in an incarnation of all sorts of things go down and life throws you all sorts of,
A
you know,
million percent. Shadow
yeah,
is a
the
real
shadows are
thing.
real. It throws you all sorts of things all the time. And and also when we vision big and we are informing ourselves to heal, telling ourselves that we're healed and healing. We are speaking that as a mantra and we're in that vibration, that frequency that will impact results and it will impact the future. So there's a kind of, I think there's a line between maybe what the person was kind of getting slightly, they can be, there's toxic positivity, which is nothing exists that is, unless it's love and light, there's no place for it. And
Right.
that's not what we're talking about. We're
Of
talking about
course
something
not.
else.
Yeah.
So just to be really, really clear for everyone who's listening and whoever wrote
Yes,
into you.
exactly, which is why I said I would never tell you what to think if you were having an accident, because that could be, of course, horribly toxic if I'm like, "Oh, suck it up, buttercup." Like, of course not. That's like lack of empathy, lack of
It's a lack of
compassion.
empathy. It's a
Yes.
lack of empathy,
Yeah.
and yeah, just I think that's I think it's really useful. I think it's really useful in wellness at this time, in this sort of the wellness movement, and that that does exist out there. But
It
I think
does.
it's no really clear that we're all journeying, and it's a bumpy old ride,
It
and
is.
but and at the same time, we're also visualizing all good things because that's really, that's what we're here to do, is also
Yes.
think big, dream big, and take up space and inhabit this incarnation fully. So, that's more of that, I'd say, in
Thank you
2025.
for
And
clarifying that. I did not explain it very well. I was just
You did. It was a beautiful job, Chris Ann. And before we go, because we're coming to the end of this podcast, it's been such a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful that you've shared the accident and and everything that's come from that. What a gift, as you say.
Mm.
What do the words love, purpose, connection mean to you?
Love, everything. Purpose, maybe a way to follow love, and connection, the way we share it, the way we share love. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Perfect, Chris Ann. Well, thank you so much. We finally made it happen.
We did.
Fourth time
I'm
lucky.
grateful. Thank you for having me on.
Well, always.
I haven't done this. This is my very first since September, like screen chat. So it feels pretty monumental for me.
Well, I think it's a real privilege, and I'm really grateful, and I think it was absolutely how it was meant to be when it was meant to
Right.
be. Kept
Right.
knocking on that door, and Spirit was saying, "No, it's going to have to be her first visual back," and so
Mm,
I'm really happy. It's a safe place for you to land, Chris Ann.
Thank you.
With all my love. Thank you so much for listening to Love, Purpose, Connection with me, Estelle Bingham. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'd really appreciate that. And if you really liked it, then leave me a review so I can keep doing what I love, healing one heart at a time. You can also follow me, Estelle.Bingham, on Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest releases. If you feel in need of some extra guidance, then my book, Manifest Your True Essence, could be helpful. You can find it online or in any major bookshop. In the meantime, thanks again for listening, thanks again for watching, and I will join you on the next episode of the Love, Purpose, Connection podcast.